Hi, folks. Welcome back. Here we are with our next recorded lecture. My name is Victor Fabiana Buenas Guerra. This is Philosophy 110. We're talking about Mesoamerican philosophy. Last time we talked about the introduction, what is Mesoamerican philosophy, and we started talking about their epistemology, how they viewed knowledge, how knowledge for them was very much about sort of living a certain way. Again, the metaphor I gave, right, is suppose that somebody knows all of the physics on how to ride a bike, but they can't ride a bike, versus someone doesn't know any of the physics on how to ride a bike, but they can ride a bike. Who actually knows how to ride a bike? Well, if we use Mesoamerican philosophy, particularly Mexica philosophy, it would be more likely that they would say that the second person, the person who actually can practically ride the bike, they're the ones who know how to ride the bike, not the first one that knows all the physics. But with that said, right, we talked about some of the pillars, we talked about their life ways, and now we're going to continue talking about their philosophy, particularly by talking about the third pillar. And these are just pillars that I've identified to make it more digestible for us in this class. And this pillar is slipperiness. So let's go ahead and begin. Let me go ahead and shrink my head real quick. So slipperiness. This is going to be very existential. So there is this saying, right? Again, apologies, my Nahua is not very good, but it's Tlalawi, Tlapetskawi in Tlatikpak, or the earth is slippery. And that's a very common Mexica Nahua saying. So again, why are life ways so important? Why is this idea of living your life a certain way, this way being passed down from your ancestor and being engaged with the world and being well-rooted? Why is that important? Well, let's take, for instance, this poem, this Words of the Ancients, or this Huehue Tlatoyi. It goes like this: Behold, and this from a mother to a daughter who's coming of age. Behold the road thou art to follow, in such a manner thou art to live. Thy lords are lords, the noble women, the old women, the white-haired ones, they gave one, they left their words. Take heed. On earth it is a time for care. It is a place of caution. Behold the word, heed and guard it, and with it take your way of life, your works. We travel, we live along a mountain peak. Over there is an abyss. Over there is an abyss. If you ghost over here, or if thou ghost over there, you will fall. Only in the middle do you go. Does one live? In other words, right, there is this constant theme of Nahua philosophy and Nahua poetry that people must middle their activities, not just women, but anyone, right? In this particular example, the daughter must middle her activities herself and all around her by pursuing moderation, that is, avoiding extremes. This should look a little similar to, for instance, virtue ethics. But this is in all aspects of one life: walking, speaking, eating, cooking, weaving, dressing, bathing, sexual relations, and all her interactions with others, both human and non-human relationships. So it's very easy to slip. You're on a mountain peak. You could easily fall down. Climbing a mountain is not easy. My wife and I were just looking at how many people die when they climb Mount Everest, for instance, which is a little morbid, but that's what my wife likes to see. But it's very easy to slip, and if you do slip, right, on your life way, you fall into excess and moral wrongdoing, and it can happen to the best of us. So even if you become virtuous or become a saint in old age, you could still slip, you could still fall. Because again, the earth is slippery no matter how good you are at walking. And slipping is bad. If you slip from the world, if you slip off of your life way, it leads to disease, imbalanceness, disequilibrium, and disorder. But not just for yourself, but for the whole community, for your mind and body, to begin with, but also for your whole community and your whole ecosystem, your whole environment gets disordered as well, and it gets unbalanced because one person, namely you, has slipped. You are no longer balanced. So here's another part of the poem, right? Hear well, O my daughter, O my child, the earth is not a good place. It is not a place of joy. It is not a place of contentment. It is merely said it is a place of joy with fatigue, a joy of pain on earth, a joy of joy with pain on earth. Again, the path is slippery and dangerous. It's full of suffering. At best, one can hope for joy with suffering, but the suffering is always going to be there, according to the Mexica. That's just a part of life to suffer. And life, there is no stopping either. There is no escaping. There's only continual becoming. You just have to go through this life and constantly become the person you're going to be in the future. And this leads to an existential problem, right? How can humans walk in balance on the slippery earth? What is the right path, the appropriate life way for humans to follow? What enables us to walk well upon this path, and moreover, to creatively extend the path, right? Because you don't just want to lift the path that your community has given you. You just don't want just to value the traditions that your community and your ancestors are giving you. You also want to add to that so that your descendants have the path that you had and more. You want your community to thrive. But how can humans balance their lives so as to minimize the suffering and maximize the pleasure of earthly existence, not only for themselves, but their whole community and for their descendants? The answer is, somewhat unsurprisingly, is what we've been talking about, right? Is philosophy, because philosophy is practical. It instructs people how to attain a middle footing so as to walk in balance upon that earth. Now, this is very different from Christian theology, right? In Christian theology, you have correct belief, and at least I don't mean all Christian theology, right? There's so many denominations out there, but I mean at least the Franciscans, the Catholics, when they went to the New World, to New Spain, right? For them, correct belief leads to correct action. But in Nahua philosophy, correct action, namely what the path is, or Oatly, that is just more important than correct belief. You might be saying, well, but you only follow that path because you believe it's the correct path. But there's a note here, right? A path is correct not necessarily in the sense that it is true, not necessarily in the sense that it corresponds with reality or metaphysical truth, whatever you want to call it. The Mexica, they say that you only need to adopt the path and accept that it works in navigating the world. That doesn't mean that it's metaphysically true in some deep ontological sense, but it's still true because it works. And again, that's what truth is to the Mexica, knowing how to navigate, knowing how to engage with the world. That is knowledge to them. So at this point, we're going to get a little into some of the sort of creation stories, right? So the Mexica believes that there has essentially been 5 ages or 5 versions of the world, essentially. And the previous 4 versions of the world have all been destroyed, have been wiped out. Now we're living in the 5th age, or the 5th sun, and this age is also going to be eventually destroyed by the creator beings or by just cosmic destruction. This is inevitable, right? And there's not something that's too crazy, right? A lot of other religions have this. You can consider, right, Norse mythology and the Ragnarok, or you can consider, for instance, some Christian denominations, the idea of rapture, end times. So they pretty much have the idea that the world is going to end this age, this 5th age, and it'll happen because the world becomes too unbalanced, not only between ourselves and other humans, but also between ourselves and the environment. So obviously, the most obvious example that you can point to is like climate change, right? Or global warming, whatever you want to call it. So the existential dilemma from before changes a little bit. It becomes, how can we humans balance on the slippery earth and at the same time work to forestall the total demise of the 5th age in human existence? Again, it is inevitable. It will eventually come. But how can we prolong that as much as possible so we can live happily here on earth? Again, note that these humans are of and in this world. There is no sense of the afterlife, so you can appeal to some comfort in some afterlife as we would in some type of monotheistic religion, for instance. The answer, again, is balance with oneself, and I've been mentioning this before, but balance with oneself, one's community, and with the environment itself. So, and here's kind of where we get some into like the mythology and some of the common depictions of the Aztecs, the Mexica. So the creator beings continue support and recreation of the 5th age of this world, along with its human inhabitants, also tires them out. So these creator beings, right, they make the rain, they make the crops grow, they make the sunlight. They're responsible for the environment, for the ecosystem. But we are also important for the environment and the ecosystem because we are responsible for the earth. So they take care of us, the creator beings, humans, but that tires them out. So we need to replenish their energy, and we do that by nourishing the creator beings with vital energies. We do this with a number of ways, right? Songs, dance, instrumental music, incense, tamales, amaranth, dough figures, animals, butterflies. But most essentially, this is kind of the most infamous one, human hearts and human sacrifice, right? This was mostly defeated soldiers. The way the Mexica and the Nahua saw war, right, is you went to war and you didn't actually kill your opponent. You actually took them prisoner and sacrificed them. The end result is still that they're dead. I'm not sure which one is more preferable, but the end result is still that they're dead. But that was what was preferable for the Nahua culture, to sacrifice them in order to engage in a relationship with the creator beings. Because again, the creator beings give you food, the humans, and we in turn give them food, give them nourishment. So we each feed on each other. And the word sacrifice, right, is already kind of misleading. When you say the word sacrifice, you're saying that you're making it sacred, but that's not entirely true, because for the Nahua, humans are sacred, all of existence sacred, but all of existence also natural. Furthermore, the creator beings, the gods, are also natural. So sustaining the fifth age, right, is an irreducible social process involving the cooperative contributions of humans, creator beings, as well as other animals. We have to sort of, the name of the game is essentially sustainability. So I know I said that, the right word was not sacrifice. The right word that the Nahua would use is makewa, which is gifting or meriting. And that's just kind of like a brute part of their reality, that if I do something nice for you, you are then obligated to do something nice for me. That's just the way the world works. And if you don't do that, then you are causing imbalance in the world and you're going against the natural order of things. So, by doing this makewa, right, this gifting and meriting, humans recreate themselves as well as recreate the entire world. We keep it going, we make it sustainable. So, there's a prescriptive claim here, right? We ought to gift and merit things from each other. That is what we should do. But there's also a deep kind of metaphysical claim here, right? That everything in the world, not just humans and creator beings, depend on other things to continue their existence. According to Maffei, right, the philosopher we're mostly reading, it is just a fundamental metaphysical fact about how the things work in this world, in the fifth age. But notice, it is not anthropocentric. For instance, in care ethics, which we've studied, humans should develop relationships when they're in this world, when they're thrown into this world. But according to Nahua philosophy, humans are thrown into this world, and the relationships already exist between, the antelope and the tiger and the grass. The circle of life is sort of already there. They're already living in their own ecosystem with their own relationships. So those relationships already exist in the world with or without humans. Humans just enter the picture, and essentially we just have to not mess it up, because the world can sort of function with this balance by itself, and we essentially are stewards of this balance. And stewards is kind of a nice way of saying it, stewards, but we just have to not mess up this balance by partaking in this balance. Do note, this is animistic. I mentioned like living animals, but also I mean also non-living things. So according to Nahua, all things, again, the otto is in all living and non-living things, remember that? And we're all part of the moral communities. Humans aren't necessarily very special. They're kind of unique because they're kind of the only ones that can kind of mess up on this relationship and this balance, because everyone else sort of just does it naturally. So this is the last pillar, right? Personhood. Personhood sort of admits of degrees. When you're born into this world, you're actually not born a person. It's a matter of how you sort of behave, and you achieve personhood by engaging in these relationships with people in your community, with the creator beings, with the non-human animals, as well as just your environment, living and non-living. Only humans, again, have to really work at this. Other things in nature kind of just do this naturally. We're the ones that have to actually think about doing it. And we're the ones that can mess up sustainability and balance, so to speak. But there is a failure, right? If you fail to participate in these reciprocal relationships, if you fail to participate essentially in sustainability, you can fail to become a person. And they did have words for this, right? One of the words was atlacatl, which means not human or inhumane. You become one of those. Or an atlacaneki, a bestial human. Or this is kind of the most intense one, in my opinion, atlacamimigi, a lump of flesh with two eyes. So that's what you become if you fail to live a balanced, sustainable life, developing these relationships. Again, the fifth age depends on this to a very large degree. And if you become a non-person, you threaten the fifth age. Again, the ending of the fifth age is inevitable. So keep that in mind. Looking at sort of like today and modern society, contemporary society, we do see that a lot of indigenous communities continue to sort of practice this idea of cosmic balance and becoming a person by practicing this cosmic environmental balance. Indigenous people account for 5% of the world population. but 15% of the world's extreme poor, which is unfortunate. But moreover, they account for 80% of all biodiversity. So all the different types of plants, all the different types of species, non-human animals, 80% of them are in native lands. The other 20%, the non-indigenous, is in non-indigenous land. So, a good question to stop at this point, right? What is knowledge to the Nahua? How do the Nahua know that they are real? Again, what's knowledge to them? How do they know their community is real? And how do you know your community is real, given that, the Nahua have a very different conception of what a real community is? So this is the last bit right here, right? And we're almost done. The Dialogue of Flower and Song is a poem that I asked you folks to sort of read, right? So again, humans are teotls, essentially, right? Humans are teotls flowers. Remember, teotl is this cosmic energy that goes through all of existence. And as teotls flowers, right, we're singing in the streams. A good question to ask is, what happens to flowers? What happens to songs? They end if you don't work at it. Flowers are fleeting, and songs do eventually end unless you continue singing. So the Dialogue of Flower and Song, it was a meeting held by a king, and they invited a bunch of other philosophers to speak about flower song or poetry and how that's relevant to humanity's spiritual life. There is this one part where Cuauhtencostli is very sad. He says that he's tormented, that our flower drums are garlanded with grief. Is man truly this way? Is our song no longer real? Why should we stand? Why even be born? There beyond we live, there beyond we exist. You are suffering, friend. Let me bear your cross, then rise there beyond. The poem does end with the sacking of the city as the Aztecs take over the city. And, the Aztecs, the Mexica, would eventually be conquered by the Spanish themselves. But there's this reassurance by the chorus that the way of life will be taken up by other people, and that therefore their community will continue to be real in the future. So a question for you to ask in this part of the discussion, right? Why is Cuauhtencostli sad? I kind of gave you a little bit of the answer right now, right? Once you identify why he's sad, does it upset you? If so, are you comforted by the chorus? Why or why not? And at this point, it's a good moment to sort of stop and ask you, right, yourself, who is your community, right? You don't have to define community in terms of race. You can define it in terms of culture or class or gender or whatever, right? Whatever. Who is your community? And how do you know your community is real? How do you know they exist meaningfully in the world? The Nahua, the Mexica, had an answer. It's about cosmic balance and making sure that the life way continues. What about for your community? Figure out what your community is and ask yourself, what does it take for that community to continue to existing? But okay, folks, I believe that is it. I will see you folks next time. Bye-bye. Take care.